Live. And yay, I just realized I didn't adjust my camera. So we are going to wait for a few people to join in here. But for those who are instantly in here or watching the replay, I have a guest by the side of myself here, and this is Matthew. And Matthew is a psychic medium as well. And this is Stapley, right? Is it Stapley, right? I want to make sure I pronounce it right. It is Stapley. And so this is Matthew Stapley, and there's Lisa. So we know we are on Facebook, and we are broadcasting on YouTube as well. So we're live on both. So can you see the comments?
I can see them on the side. Yes. We have Lisa, Felicia, Brianna. Hey,
yes.
guys.
And we have Dawn. Hello. Hi, everyone who is coming in. And so Lisa is my partner in the business and a lot of other things, my little soul sister of everything. So she may be, you'll see her giving us little comments and stuff here as well. And to those who are joining in from Matthew's page, welcome. Thank you for being with us. So this is Matthew Stapley. I am so excited to have Matthew with me today, to be by my side as we dive a little bit into the energy. I keep having to fix my camera. I don't know why it moved, but yeah. So Matthew is a psychic medium. He also does a lot of other amazing things in this world. And we were just actually talking about the fact that he's a ordained minister. And we were speaking about that and just having a conversation off camera. And so I'm actually going to give Matthew the floor for a moment because I really want people to hear his voice. It is hypnotic, just going to say. And let him speak a little bit about himself and tell me a little bit more about you. But I do need to ask this one little thing that I discovered about you that I did not know.
Sure.
Lanterns of the Soul.
Yes, one of my oracle decks. Yeah. And thank you for the voice compliment. I think it sounds like swear words and cigarettes, but I appreciate the kindness. Yeah, Lantern of the Soul, when I developed that was the first deck I ever made, and it was a process. I felt triggered the entire time that I was making it, because I think, like all oracle decks, like your deck and my deck, I think it gets people really thinking about who they are and the elements of themselves and how they relate to the world around them. And I think that anytime we engage in something like that, it can be very amazing and very challenging all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that many of us other creators, when we're working, on books or we're working on oracle decks or whatever, we often are doing our own work alongside the creation of whatever it is that we're doing. So it's fun. It's sold around the world, which is cool. And I remember the first time that I tuned into a live video on Facebook and the person was using my deck. I almost fell off my chair. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, that's Lantern of the Soul. So I'm like you, a medium, and I think, yes, I am an ordained minister, but I think in a sense all of us probably are. I think everybody on the earth has a message, and we all have a purpose, and we all live our purpose just in being who we are. And so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, Corey, but it was somewhere into the ethers.
And we're also both Canadian. And
We
so
are.
we are, right? We're both Canadian. You are in the Ottawa area.
I am.
Right. And I am in Alberta from Newfoundland. And it's just so good to see us Canadians. I mean, God bless all the rest of our psychic medium friends as well. But to see us as Canadians, right, being able to really, truly bring this work and come to life and share and collaborate, it just fills my heart.
Oh, me too. I think that I think us, and I'm sure maybe every country has this, but I think, when people in the same space get together, there's a certain element of magic that happens because we're both from here, we both live here, we both see the intricacies of our country and the beauty of Canada. If you think about just at a very physical level, I mean, it is a gorgeous country and it's filled with amazing people that are renowned around the world for kindness and love. So I'm excited to be collaborating with a Canadian. I almost never get to, so it's exciting for me.
Right. It's like, yeah. And I don't do a whole lot of like collaboration work. And with there's so many reasons, but when I do them, it just feels like it is something very magical. Hey, it just like there's just something that just like ignites inside of us. And when we, as soon as I came on and you were on the camera below, I could feel the healer in me. I could feel my whole body. I could feel my hands on my back. It's literally tattooed on my back, hands on my back.
That's
And I
cool.
could feel everything just heating up and in between my arms. I'm like, oh, this is like magical healing energy. And it's just so good to feel that sense of just being able to connect and bring that energy together, and your kindness and your sensitivity. It's the first thing I picked up on was the minute we came in. It's like, oh, he is so sensitive to everything.
That's a very accurate statement for sure. And, I think, and I can relate to the idea of feeling, the healing energy, the elements of our gifts awakening. I think anytime that we are around other people who hold a similar energy, a similar vibration, it really does activate who we are. And, I think over the last couple of years, so many people are awakening to their own abilities and their gifts, and they're feeling, the intensity of the world. And let's face it, it has been a little bit hectic. It's like Walmart at 6 o'clock, but everywhere. It's a challenging place right now. And, I think that people are really feeling that. And because more and more people are awakening, the same thing that happened when we were, backstage talking, we were both feeling that increase in our vibration. I think so many people are experiencing that as a collective right now. And I think for us, we're like used to that. For people that aren't, they probably think they're going crazy a little a little bit, um, which is challenging. It's challenging.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Like,
Yeah, let's
yeah,
do it.
let's dive into that a little bit, because, and yes, my internet is going a little bit wonky. I see it. Um, I see it happening here. So that feeling like people are literally going crazy. Like, I get people messaging me all the time, and they're like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's going on with me. I don't feel like myself. And then myself and another one of my friends were speaking about feeling like it's like time warp.
Yeah.
And she's doing the oddest things, and weird things are happening, and she's just like skipping and missing time, and find, finding herself in like these moments of where she's like, where did I just put that? And finding things like putting, say, sugar in the fridge, or like, when did I just do that? And that's not that there's something wrong with you as a person. That's something that's happening energetically.
Totally. Another weird one that I've heard recently is the air smelling like certain years that have already passed. Like that's an interesting sort of like timeline jump, I think, as well. I had somebody tell me that they thought the air smelled like 2012 or 2013 or whatever it was. And, I think when we're seeing this intersection of realities, essentially, that's what I think of it as, intersection of realities or timelines or whatever. I think that is a little jarring. It reminds me of the movie The Matrix, when there's the deja vu moment, and it was a glitch in the Matrix or whatever. I think many of us are feeling things like that. And I don't know about you, but I always think when those things start happening, it speaks to our alignment. And I think when we have those really intense synchronicities, whether it's deja vu or, putting your remote control in the freezer instead of your chicken wings, whatever it happens to be, I think that speaks to either being really ultra in alignment or being slightly out of alignment, depending on what's happening. But I think one thing that I know for certain in the last year or so is that a lot of intensity is surfacing. So intensity within people, things that are yet to heal, maybe even within individuals, but also things that have yet to heal within the structures of our society. And I think all of that energy surfacing is what's causing a lot of these like weird glitchy moments within people, or their reality, their experience of the reality.
Right, yes, and so I'm like I said, it's this not weird. I don't call it weird anymore. I don't think it's weird anymore. But
Ooh,
I'm like, I feel as if, or I'm sensing, or I'm seeing as if like it's like when your internet does go out. Like, I'm seeing like these like how your internet goes out, and it just got this blank moment, and everything freezes on the screen, and then everything starts again. And
yes.
I'm like,
Totally.
right. And you're witnessing that and you're seeing it. And I can physically see that happening. Even in conversations, I'm standing with somebody, and as I'm standing with somebody, everything kind of pauses and stops. And for that moment, it's as if I'm bearing witness to the experience and I'm observing it,
Yes.
right? And I'm observing that experience, but nothing is really happening. And then all of a sudden, boom, it all starts again.
Yeah, it totally. I always describe that as like the feeling that the earth has stopped, like it just stopped turning for a second.
Yes.
Yeah, and I like hearing somebody else talk about that because I don't know that many people that feel that moment where it's almost like everything just pauses and you can observe, as you've said, the world and yourself as a part of it. I noticed that happened a lot, like right before the 2020 happened, and it started happening again a lot recently. Um,
Mhm.
and so it is interesting for sure. Um, what have you noticed when it comes to people's experiences of all the intensity out there?
Um, what I really notice is people are really questioning themselves. They're like, "Is it real?" Like they're not so quick to jump into just accepting it. Like they are more curious about. They're questioning it and the intensities, and they're wondering why. Whereas before, I found people were just accepting of it. And I'll give like a little. So back in, it must have been 2000. So it would have been about 2 years ago, I guess. I was out for a walk in the evening and I was recording these walks with me. I was doing like a 12-week transformation or 12-day transformational thing. And I'm walking down this lower path.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I heard, get to safety, get to safety, get to safety, get to high ground, get to high ground. And I'm like, I'm on the highest part of, it was Sylvan Lake at the time. There's no way of it's a lake. It's not the ocean. It's not a tsunami going to come in and
Right.
get me. Right. I knew the reality of it, but I could feel that happening. And so I felt this panic and I needed to get home. And so walked back up around and I went home and I sat down and I started recording. And as I started to record a recording that I was doing, the earth started to shake.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and so the community over had an earthquake hit right
Oh,
as I was sitting down. So to get to the higher ground literally was the universe was speaking, like the Mother Earth was speaking, and it wasn't going to attack, it wasn't going to get me, but it was just saying this was coming. And it
that's
was a darkness came in with it. But
yeah.
people are questioning the darkness instead of just taking it as something bad. It just
Mm.
means, right? People are starting to understand that the darkness that we're seeing or those messages doesn't mean they're stopping and pausing and using more discernment, I guess.
Yeah, and, I think that it's really awesome that you talk about that because it's so discernment is so vital in any kind of energy work, and because people are awakening, they're becoming energy workers whether they like it like it or not in a sense.
Whether you
Um
want to or not,
Whether you
welcome.
want to or not. So I think it's cool that you mentioned that, and also the idea that just because something is dark doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, and definitely doesn't mean that it's evil. We can everything. I always think that everything in reality in our physical 3D world is suspended between those two polar things, light and dark, right? So all of our experiences are somewhere in the spectrum between darkness and light, and I think questioning it and feeling it out and sitting with it, especially if it's our own darkness that is, surfacing as thoughts or feelings or impulses, I think sitting in that gives us a whole lot of information about ourselves and our journey and our path, but also in how we can best adapt to the the roller coaster that is never ending at the moment. So I think that is really cool that you mentioned those things, and sitting in it, like you said, is really the only way to know what it is and the quality of it. I
Mhm.
think I think people I think people jump into the idea that if something is light, it's good. If it's dark, it's bad. And that is something that all of us who are, gone through a healing journey or we're on our healing journey, we start to see that just because something is light and dark doesn't mean it's good and bad. Something can be so light that it knocks us out of our natural vibrational alignment in not a nice way, in a very uncomfortable way. And so that's an example of something that is ultimately really positive and loving, but might be too much at certain times until we get used to it. So I think when we're looking at darkness and light and all of that, we have to go back to everybody's so different, and everyone sits in a different vibrational space at different times for different reasons, and all of it is okay. I think that I think that's important.
Yes, because the other thing that I'm really noticing, especially coming into this 2024, is people are making it okay to not be okay, and
Yeah,
that they're finally accepting that we should be able to feel. It's a luck. It's like it's a luxury to being a human. The fact that we can feel, right,
totally.
and that we're not here to numb feeling. We're here to let ourselves feel our experiences, feel our way through our own emotions, so that we can evolve those emotions and that we can really truly embody that journey through, because we're more than this little physical little self. There's so
Totally.
much more. And there's this plane around us, there's this energy around us called the astral plane. And I'm like, and in that is where all your history is. It's where all your right through these times and spaces of where your soul existed. Sometimes, when you really start to recognize what you're here to do is you're here to assist your soul
Yeah.
in this journey of finally being done with some of those karmatic debts, or some of those old lines of being, of service to everything, or being enslaved, or whatever that may be, and to finally set that self free. And so it becomes an imprint of something new that begins again, and it begins while we're in this lifetime.
Yeah, totally, and my hope is that people over time will take that, like, all of us as a society will take that to another level too, which is like, okay, we're starting to accept that, hey, you know what? Like, we're allowed to have bad days or weeks or months or even years.
Years. How about
I'm in
years?
I'm in the years club over here. So, I think that, that acceptance at an individual level, I'm hoping it will birth that acceptance at a societal level. I wrote a thing the other day on Facebook, and it actually was kind of funny. It talked about like the Stanley Tumbler craze. I don't know if you've seen
We
those.
laughed because myself and my husband had just had a conversation about that exact same thing.
Okay.
Share it with us, because I'm like, it was just, I read yours and I start laughing because I'm like, I had a moment of thinking, what the hell's wrong with people? Like, why are people so? And then I thought, you know what? It's more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more than that. That's not what it's about.
Our reactions were exactly the same because I go down YouTube rabbit holes probably like everybody else
Me
on
too.
the planet, right? And I don't know how I haven't been arrested because I just get curious about things, and so I click on the next one and the next one, and I went from how to bake a cake to, like, lethal injection in an hour. So, like, anyway, so, I think that, I think what I realized in watching that is that people are just seeking some kind of tangible moment, because that's all it is, even though it's an object. It's a tangible moment where they feel okay, where they feel like they've accomplished something, or they have been validated as a person in their identity, or they found some comfort for a moment or whatever. And I think this is something that many of us seek. And what I realized, I mean, not just yesterday, but over the last, I don't know,
Mhm.
decade, is that the bar of what we are meant to, or told we must accomplish, is becoming higher and higher and higher. But our support systems as people, our things that we need to have a solid foundation, right from housing to money in the bank for food, to healthcare, to education, is becoming lower and lower and lower. And sometimes it's completely non-existent, depending on where you're at. And so that creates such a massive gap that is totally unmanageable. Like that whole gap is not going to happen for anybody at any point, because it's an impossibility. And so we're basing all of our goals, ambitions, dreams, but most importantly, we're basing our what makes me successful or a good person or capable or whatever on things that are completely intangible and unreal. And so when we have moments where we see the Stanley tumbler and everyone else has one, so we need to have one. It's like a moment of relief that we fit in, that we are successful, that we're solid, that we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. And so I think that that's what that's about. But also, what I mentioned is that anybody who's lived through trauma, which if you're watching this is probably you, the same way that it's me, and I'm sure Corey's seen some stuff in her life. I think that anyone who's lived through trauma, or even has leftovers from trauma like PTSD or CPTSD, we cling and find relief in moments where things make sense, even if it's just for a second. You get that out breath of everything you've been holding on to. And so I think we live in a traumatized society in general because of the way society is structured with that unrealistic gap and other things. And so when people grab that Stanley tumbler or whatever the current craze is, off the shelf, and it becomes theirs, it's similar to that moment of relief that somebody who's experienced a lot of trauma gets when something makes sense for a second, or when there's an explanation, or there's a moment of stability or solidity. And so I think these two things are very related to each other. And I think we'll see it over and over and over again until we as a society heal. I think what you mentioned about the acceptance of difficulty and the acceptance of moments where things aren't okay is good and normal. I think if we can get that to a place where the world can see that, not just as individuals, but as a society, I think we're starting to see, the structure of society admit that as a whole, we're not okay. The way that we function is not working anymore. And so my hope is that that same thing that happened at an individual level will now translate to a global level, and then real change can happen. And that gap can do this again to something manageable and realistic for people.
Exactly, right? I'm like, 'cause there is that gap, and I'm like, hope in a mug. That it's hope in a mug. It's a moment of hope, and those little
Totally.
spark, right? Or our ordinary moments give us our most extraordinary experiences.
Yeah.
So, the video was like this young girl getting it for Christmas, and she was like over the moon about this. And I'm like, even if that little moment, that might be that one moment that sparks the sense of, inspiration inside of her, that she's just like, and I said, and that's where us are programmed with such sinister kind of energy sometimes, because my first thought was, and I'm going to be very honest, was, well, I hope she don't put sugary slushy in there. They just give them a bigger mug to put something, and I'm like, and instantly I said to myself, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And whose language and whose conversation was that? And I'm like, that's my childhood, because that's what I would have heard,
Yeah.
right? Instead of saying, here you go, here's your cup, like just fill your cup. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, it's hope in a mug is pretty much, but it's so much more than that, of course. And it reveals that sense of that gap, that
Yeah.
space that we have. And on a scale of, where we're coming from, as we're breaking cycles and chains, and we're making changes. And 2008, of course, is the 8 year. And so people think there's all this hope that 2024 is going to be the best year ever. It's going to be the best year to do your biggest healing. It's going to be your best year but it doesn't mean your biggest success will appear the way
Right.
that you may be visualizing it.
Yes.
Your biggest success comes in saying yes to you, right?
Ye
And when you say yes to you, then you can see all the other successes that you have had in life. And
yes.
then you change that sense of what success in the future will look like for you.
I think that I got chills when you were talking. I think that you've absolutely nailed it. And, I think the idea of success, like, if we asked people, what does success really mean? I'm sure at first they would say, well, if you're a good person, you're a successful person, which is what every Hallmark card has said
Okay, Hallmark.
forever. But and it's not wrong, but I think that success is such an individual thing, because what might be successful to me as somebody who has a significant disability might be going to the mailbox. That might be a successful day. That might be a real win.
Mhm.
And for somebody else, it might be, I don't know, getting a raise, or maybe it's finally feeling that they found home, whatever it happens to be for them. And so I think defining success individually is vitally important. And I think you're right when you're saying, maybe, if it's your biggest healing year, that's a huge success. I think anytime we move forward and even make it to the next day, especially if we're going through a hard time, that's a beautiful example of not only our strength and our endurance and determination and resilience, but also our vibrancy as people. Some of the most vibrant people I've ever met were in the worst part of their life when I met them and saw their vibrant energy. And I think that goes to say that even in the hardest moments that we might be in, our light isn't dim. We may feel like it is, but it never really is.
Yeah. And because our lowest moments is our most defining, right?
Totally.
And if we jump out of our humility too quickly, if we jump up too fast, if we get up and it's like that fall, you hurt yourself, and you're like, oh, did anyone see that? And you got to get up and brush yourself and pretend like nothing is wrong. Well, that's what we've been doing our whole lives.
Totally.
And that's why we have so many cycles and circles of repeat that keeps happening, happening, happening. It's like if you fall and you stay down and you just sit there and you let yourself cry, right? Let yourself cry. And I just remember, and I think this is in one of my books as well. And I remember writing about a few years ago being in such a place, and I wasn't expecting myself to break the way that I broke, because I was supposed to be moving into like this great time in my life. I had finally lost the weight. I had gotten this body, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I'm like just broken. And I sat into the bath, and I was in the bathtub, and I remember sitting in the bathtub for hours, and the water was cold, and then the water had run out. I'd let the water out. And then I realized I was sitting in this bathtub with absolutely no water, just me curled up in a little tiny ball. And I could see this reflection of me in the chrome
Oh, wow.
of this girl looking back at me. And I'm like, I had so many moments during that period of time of when I'd see a reflection of me somewhere, and the one tear would just fall.
Oh,
And I
wow.
realized that moment was a moment of I stayed down long enough to have compassion, instead of asking myself, what's wrong with me? How come I'm not better? How come? Right. It's like I let myself stay there to feel that experience, to feel that moment, and just say, because you have been through hell.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have been through things that you have just been taught your whole life to say, you're tough, you're strong, it's okay, just get up, just go, just do. And it's like, I got this, I'm rah, I can put on the mask, I can do this. And it's like, no, you can't no more.
Yeah.
No, you can't anymore. You can't do that anymore. And that's not who you're meant to be anymore. And those moments in time, I'm like, I look back at those moments now and I think those were such defining moments that brought me to a place of compassion for myself and kindness, that I started to be able to even understand others differently, right? And see others differently and look in. And it opens up your heart. And I think that's the key, is that we as a collective world energies is our hearts, we believe our hearts to be open, but are our hearts really as open as we tell ourselves they are? Because it's half-assed truth, right? We live in half-assed truth, we tell half-hearted truth, and that radical honesty is to be that honest with ourselves, to say, I'm not as open as I am, I'm not as available as I think I am. And it's like, oh, because I think all of this into my story and into my narrative, and it's not always my truth. And to live spiritual is to be the best human being that we can be, not just for the world, but for ourselves.
Oh, 100%. And I think you're totally right. Like especially with your, well, all of it, but your example of um, if you fall down, rather than just trying to get up and pretend that nothing happened, actually sit with it and cry or grieve the moment or feel whatever it is that you're feeling. I think it's very important. One thing that I've noticed about our world is nobody has time to process anything. And so what we end up doing is carrying our, well, for some people, it could be a backpack. For me, it's like 4 freight trains of stuff, right? From one experience to another, one relationship to another. And that includes our relationship with our experiences and our relationship with ourselves. And I think that if people were given time in their lives, like sick days, even, to sit with whatever it is just happened, then people wouldn't have so much baggage anymore. But also, I think, importantly, I think that people would feel freer to be themselves. I feel like they would recognize within themselves that it's okay to go through whatever it is that they're going through at whatever intensity they need to experience it, but also give permission for other people to do the same. And I think anytime people see others doing work on themselves, they feel inspired to do work on themselves as well. So maybe what we really need to do is normalize normalize that a little bit, and say, hey, like, healing is not pretty. It's beautiful, but it's not pretty. It's hard, and it's ferocious sometimes. But it's okay to be vulnerable even among other people and show who you are. I know for me, I didn't have a choice, because when my life went downhill, it went downhill in front of 20,000 people on every Monday night. So, I didn't really feel like I had a choice. I kind of had to tell people what was going on. But I'm happy about that, because the one big feedback that I got, even though I was expecting judgment, what I got was support, but also people saying, "I'm so happy that you're talking about this, because now I feel okay about my own situation." Um,
Mhm.
so I think what you're saying is beautiful and very true.
Right. And we're sitting right here, right? We're sitting here in this moment. So no matter we get to these moments, and and I would say it's a privilege to get ourselves to these moments, to be it, because many people we love don't get to these moments and these times. And so it's just to be able to, know that even though we fall, we get back up. And grace, like the power of grace.
Yeah.
you know
It
what is grace like to you? Like, if you were to be able to speak of the voice of grace, or what grace is for you, what would you tell others what grace is?
Oh, I like that. I love these kinds of conversations.
Mhm.
So, for me, grace is not the typical definition of grace. For me, grace is the moment of stillness, like the blessing of the eye of the storm. To me, that is always what grace is. It's like no things are not good. In fact, they're terrible. I'll feel lost, I'll feel scared, I'll feel alone, I'll feel disconnected even. And then all of a sudden, all of that just pauses, even though I can still feel it and see it happening in my life. There's this moment where I'm like, you know what? I don't have to. I can't fix all of this right now anyway. There's literally nothing I can do. So I'm going to listen to some Metallica or some Guns N' Roses and like sit outside and watch the animals around me and just breathe. And for me, that's what grace is. It's the best definition I can give, which I know is more of an experiential visual, but it's that's what it is. That feeling of like the universe has this right now. I'm just gonna breathe. Um, yeah.
No,
How about you?
that's it. That experience. It's like you can only describe it through an experience, right?
Mm,
For me, it was a tree. For me, it was my. For me, it really hit home for a tree. When I
oh,
moved here to this house, and there
mm,
was this tree out in front of my house, and this tree, I didn't know what it was, and I had to keep guessing what like. I'm like, oh my god, I have a willow tree. I love willow trees, and I'm like, I got a willow tree, and then it was like it wasn't a willow tree, and I'm like, this little speck of disappointment came in,
mm.
and I'm just like, oh, that's kind of life. And then little leaves came. That's my dog. And then little flowers started to bloom. I'm like, oh my god, but it has flowers. So grace holds hope.
Oh, I love that. I think that's beautiful.
Right? Grace holds hope, and you just got to stay with yourself, like the tree, long enough
Yes.
discover that you're going to bloom again. Everything is a cycle, right? And we're always going to be experiencing, and those moments are going to keep coming and rising and being there with us. But it's going to come again, right? There's always going to be something, and we're going to be dormant. And in that rest and that pause and that silent stage, there's so much to be discovered. But that tree started to speak to me, and that tree
Mm.
became kind of everything. And it ended up being a 3-in-1 tree. It ended up being like a golden plum and a Saskatoon berry, and then a flowering tree down the bottom.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Right?
That's amazing. That's beautiful. I love that. We should do an experiment, and we should ask people. People should just throw words in the chat, and we should see, what
Yeah.
we feel from them. I think that would be fun, or like what our definition of those words are. Because you're right. Like, we hear a lot of these words a lot, but we don't often always know what they mean. And I think you're right. Some things are only describable by an experience. There's no words that can totally nail it. And yeah, it would be fun to see if anyone has a word they want to talk about.
So, what word? And so we have Lisa by Grace Go I. That's a friend of mine, and she's the word alchemist. And she's like, "You're going to mention me again," and I am going to mention you because Grace is in her name, right? And it's Lisa by Grace Go I, and she's Lisa Star Francis, and she's a word alchemist. Um, and so Lisa put light, and yeah, Lisa put light.
Oh, you go. Do you want to go first on that one?
No, you go first.
All right, I'll do it. All right, light. Oh, That is a tough one. So to me, I could look at it like 400 different ways, obviously, photonically in physics, but we're not going to go there. No, for me, light represents higher vibration. It represents compassion. It represents grace. It represents that, calm in the storm. It represents that kindness that people just get inspired with. It represents that moment where that you're in alignment. It represents self-acceptance and acceptance of other people. To me, light is anything that creates oneness. So when I think of the light, I think of if we think about dimensionally the highest point of light, God or the source or whatever. I think that the closer you get to that, the less separation there is. So for me, light in its purest definition is not conformity, but oneness, togetherness, synergy, uh s- yeah, that's it. You go.
Light to me, light to me would be breath of the divine,
I like
but that would make it complicated too. So bringing it down would be the breath into self.
mm,
That's when the light comes on. That's when there's just this light that shifts us, that changes us, right? When we breathe into ourselves, that breath into yourself, that breathing into. And with
uh,
that, I'm just like I got that rhythm, like I got this like rhythm going, and I could feel this rhythm, and I'm like, there's a happiness that we don't realize it's a happiness when we breathe into ourselves.
mm,
Relief. It gives us that sense of relief.
I like that. And I like that what I heard from that is like you're stepping into flow, right, with yourself and the
Yeah.
universe. And you're giving me chills again. I love that. Lisa by Grace Goy said removal. I think that's a really like,
Ooh,
I'm liking that one.
that's a big one.
That is a huge one.
Removal. Um, Space.
I like that.
Opening space. Instantly I want it to really look up. It's removal felt like the need to really look up and look into. And I just thought about, when the fresh snow falls and you go to remove the snow, and it's a removal of the snow. You're moving it to one side, you're clearing a path, but the snow still exists. So sometimes it's removal is not it's not gone. It's just creating a space.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome. Mine was so not as fancy as that when I saw removal. I'll give you the wish.com version. So I feel for me, removal is just the choosing to no longer be in resonance with something. So, like if we're thinking like cords and attachments or things like that, we're removing something or we're removing, I don't know, like a page that we follow, we're removing, like lint from our dryer, whatever. We're choosing to break resonance with something, which does create space, obviously. But I think to me, removal, to truly remove something, it has to be removed from the self, even if it's something external to us. So to me, when I think of removal, I often think of healing. I think of working on whatever you want gone, however it's anchored within you and your experiences in your life, in your past, and all of that, healing that in a way to break resonance with something. That's what I think of when I think of removal.
I want to add to that because I'm just
Yeah.
like, so when I seen the snow over here, when the snow gets ready to go, we don't have to take the snow away. We don't have to go, right. The snow that we move to the side, we don't have to take away. It gets taken away for us.
Oh, I like that.
Right. And so the same thing with our healing. We don't have to take a shovel and like make it move. Is that when we surrender it, we actually allow space for the divine to remove that for us, right?
Yeah.
To really let it break itself down, like to disintegrate in its own space and time. And so I'm like, it just felt like that's where the divine comes in.
I like that. And I think you're totally right about that. I think when an obstacle is taken off of our path, I think yes, we've done work within ourselves or our lives to help that to happen. But ultimately, it is divinity, it is spirit, it is the universe that's saying, "Hey, we're going to move this big rock or this mountain now because you have reached a place where you no longer need it." And I think this brings a whole other conversation about how sometimes we really need our obstacles. for whatever reason. Some people are picking some really good words.
I want to go back to a basic one that I seen by Kevin. Happiness.
I knew it. That's what I wanted to. We're in sync. You want to go?
Happiness. Do you want to go?
Sure, I'll go.
Okay.
Happiness to me. So this is where I become like a spiritual buzzkill. Because I think happiness is a beautiful thing, right? And we all want more of it. And who wouldn't? It feels good. But I think happiness, like any other extreme emotion, because it is an extreme emotion, it's not meant to be an all day long, every day, 24/7 for your whole life thing. So if we're seeking to be happy every minute of every day forever, that's that big gap that we talked about earlier. Happiness, I think, it comes in moments where we have like a eureka moment, right? Where we have something where we're so in alignment with it and it resonates at such a profound level that it opens our heart at a big level. That's happiness. And I think that they're beautiful moments, and I wish they were permanent. But unfortunately, we live in this polar world, and our experiences are polarized. But yeah, I think happiness it's fleeting, it's powerful, it's profound, it comes when we need it. I think, like Natasha says, prefer to have contentment over happiness, and I'm totally in agreement with that. I think that is a reasonable everyday, all day long goal, to feel satisfied. But yeah, that's my my 2 cents. No, dollar, because of inflation, on happiness.
You're going to say, yeah. Happiness to me is it's just like the blossoming moments.
Mm.
It's like you can't live in the bloom forever.
Yeah, I like though.
It's
That's
like you can't live in the bloom, and if you're only excited about the bloom, you'll never get to the fruit.
It's true,
Right? The fruit is what comes after. The happiness moment is the stepping stones towards that sense of contentment, that sense of and contentment is not complacent, right? It's that knowing that I'm content with this, I've got to this place, but to get to the fruit, and
Yeah.
and knowing that it's okay to happiness is a sense of knowing that everything is temporary.
Yeah,
Right? It's a flow, and it is a flow. It's a temporary experience, and it ignites something inside of us. Like it's like an igniter. It gives you the opportunity to want more of that experience.
It's so true, and I'm gonna take your bloom and fruit analogy or simile one step further, and
Yeah.
it's when the fruit falls off the vine, what's inside of it? Seeds for
Seeds.
more fruit plants, right? And so, our experiences that bring us happiness, that blossom, that bloom, and if that you can't stay in the bloom forever, like, that is one of the best lines I've ever heard, and I hope that you have trademarked it somewhere because it's amazing. Um, it really is, like, it was awesome. And, yeah, we can't stay in the bloom forever, and sometimes even saying goodbye to the fruit can be hard. But again, nothing is permanent. Um but when we can even let go of the fruit that we've cherished after the blossom and all of that, then what we get left with is seeds for a lot more fruit and a lot more blossoms and trees and happiness. So I think what that says to me is that our happiness continues on to create more opportunities for happiness. So if we follow what brings us that feeling, that joy, and the rewards, the fruit that come from it, then what we're going to end up with is a lot more of it in the future. Very, very good thinking, Corrie.
Great. I'm going to add on to that again. Like, I love this. I love this.
Me too.
And so what I'll always say is that the fact that instead of trying to create an image of what you think your future should look like, because there's so many moving factors and pieces, or what you think your future person or yourself or whatever it should look like. If you literally start to think of, what do I want to feel and cultivate more of in a feeling sense in my future?
I like that.
And then what do I want to feel more of in my future? And so you start following, engaging by that, because if you're not feeling it, then that's not where you're meant to be. So if a relationship is not bringing you more of the thing that you're seeking for your future, and it's bringing you back in the meter over here, then something is not working.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you keep If you keep bringing your past into your now, your future will look just like your past.
Totally.
It's got to be something more of what you want over here in order to create that and start walking into that feeling.
I like that way of looking at it. It's like you cannot take your fruit and plant the seeds in concrete. It's not gonna
Exactly.
it's not
Right.
gonna work. It's
Yeah.
not gonna work.
I
No,
have
it's so
I have
true.
a new book coming out this year, and it's called Wine and Chips.
Oh, awesome.
And in it, I talk about the gutless grapes.
I like that.
Yeah, it's Rose, and Rose has to meet the gutless grapes. And the gutless grapes are those without seeds. And what's the point of not having a seed? Right? If we have no seed, so we have no hope, if we have no, right, the gutless grapes. And that is that shallow sense of self sometimes. And so she meets those grapes.
I love that, and, I think that's gonna help a lot of people because I think we all have moments of gutless grapes, um,
Right?
in our lives. I've never heard that word. I'm pretty sold. I need a new tattoo, Corey, so I think gutless grapes might just be it. No, that's beautiful. I love that. I'm loving this conversation. It's so cool how we can start with a word and unpack an entire life philosophy from one word. It's
Right, from one word, right?
yeah.
And it's just such philosophy that just comes in, and it's the craziest little things. Um, so was there any other word that really caught your attention? Are we ready to go forward?
I don't know. I'm just loving the authenticity.
Okay.
I like that one. Well, last word, authenticity. Um, Yeah. So for me, authenticity is just about being yourself. And I think authenticity, especially in the beginning, holds a lot of vulnerability. It's scary to be ourselves. It's scary to take our masks off and to ourselves first. We have to first be authentic with ourselves before we can be authentic with the world. And that part is a little bit challenging. So I think authenticity is just showing who you are, not being ashamed of who you are, even if you are experiencing some shame, showing who you are anyway. It's a simple word, but it is a life changing word. So if you decide to step into who you are and to really be you, it's going to shake things up. You're going to rattle chains. It's going to stir pots within you. It's going to stir pots around you, but it's going to be very worth it. I often, when I think of authenticity, think of something that forget who it was. My great aunt, she said to me, she said, it doesn't matter what you do in your life, Matthew. At the end of your life, you just have to be happy with what you've done and who you are. And I think authenticity really speaks to that statement. If this was the last day, or when our last day arrives, will we be able to say, I'm really happy with who I am and the life that I've lived, and even if I didn't like the choices I made, am I still happy with what I did with the consequences? And to me, if we can answer that to with a yes, then we were fairly authentic in our living. We're very complex, complicated creatures as humans, or whatever you happen to be watching this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we're
whatever you happen to be.
whatever you happen to be. I think we're very complex. And so the idea of full on authenticity is kind of scary because we're kind of like unfolding our relationship and our truth as we move through life. There's not one point where we're just like finished, right? And so as people, so we're not painting. So, I think when we're talking about authenticity, it has to be with the understanding that we, our truth, who we are, our personality, our physical shapes, all of this is constantly changing. And with every experience, with every day, our authenticity is going to look different. And so to me, authenticity is who you are in this moment, like uncensored or translucent or transparent or whatever, but also understanding that who you are is in progress still. That's what I think. My long-winded answer.
That's not long-winded. That's actually very good. I got radical honesty.
Oh, I like that.
Authenticity comes with radical honesty. And
Hmm.
it's not that you just go out into the world and you blurt to people, well, you look like this. It is radical honesty with yourself. And
Yeah.
radical honesty with yourself sometimes says, why do you feel such a need to say something unkind to somebody else?
Yeah.
Why do you feel such a need to judge somebody else? What is it within you? And that's just a little piece of it, but that's a part of it, right? It's just that sense of radical honesty, just really brings us back into that self with built in with compassion.
Yes.
built in with compassion, and recognizing that, the enemy we create, the biggest enemy we create is within ourselves.
Yeah.
And our authenticity is not in letting that enemy stay with us. And I did some channel sketching last year. And in it, I started to draw this funny looking man who had, and now this is going down a rabbit hole a little bit, but when I was living in Sylvan Lake, I heard somebody walk into my house, and I seen these shoes, and I thought it was my great grandfather, who was, his name was Francis Perrier, and Perrier would have been his. And he walked in. I see these shoes, and then I realized it wasn't my grandfather. It
Mm.
was it wasn't nice. And I looked out through my door, and I seen the men in black. These men in black, they weren't really there to everyone else, but to me, I seen these men in black standing outside of my door. And I just remember just getting on my deck and just cursing on them, just saying, "Get away! You don't ever get to come here." And I was sketching about 6 months later, and I sketched this like guy, and he had a little mustachy thing, and he says, "I am the sinister."
Mm.
And most people will never see sinister inside of themselves.
Yeah. It's
And
true.
and you have spotted inside of me, so now I have to leave.
Oh, I just got chills again.
Because only when you can see it in yourself, when it's discovered in yourself, then it can't stay, because it has no rite of passage. So that sinister energy is the thing that allows us to be able to manipulate someone else into doing something, because we cry our tears, or we act a certain way, or we play out the victim, and we're like, and we're like, oh, all these people were so unkind to me, and then someone's like, oh, you poor thing. But what did you do?
Yeah.
What are you doing? How are you contributing to your own unhappiness, to your own? And it's like, and in that moment, it just became this experience of really checking off in all of those experiences that, oh, we learn that in the first 7 years of our lives. We allow space for that little sinister little being to exist in us, because children, I used to say this, I was a single mom. Children are master manipulators.
Yeah.
they
True.
they play one parent against the other. They play teachers against the kids. And I was in school with my daughter one time, called into a school meeting, and she got like she was very artistic, so no way she would have gotten like a 38 in art. So we get there, and she has this, and I said to her, the art teacher, I'm like, I'm not going to walk in and start yelling at you that you've done something wrong, because the kid with 100 in art is all of a sudden getting 38. I want to see what's happening here.
Yeah.
And literally, she gives me this sketching of this drawing of leaves on a paper, and they're supposed to draw a leaf. And the new teacher, who was new to teaching, was a perfectionist. And so
Mm.
she kept handing back my daughter's creative work and telling her it wasn't the way she wanted it. And she said, "But I'm an artist. I'm creative. Like, I can only give you what I have." And
Yeah.
so it's perfection to me. It's the way, and every time you were telling me that it wasn't good enough, you were hurting my feelings. So I wrote F you in leaves and handed in, because that's how I felt. And I'm like, that's not sinister. That's truth. But how she got about it was wrong. And I said to the lady, like, your perfectionism is causing this rift, and you are bringing down the class.
Yeah.
So you are telling children they're not good enough, and now you're planting that seed in them. And once we sat down, we had that conversation, the light came on for everyone. Right.
That's awesome.
Right. And so those are those experiences and moments in life where we've carried that little energy with us for so long, until we can finally like flick it out, and
Yeah.
and just say, I'm not going to let that little sinister little self have that kind of space to own me the same
Yeah.
way.
I think that's so cool. And I think it almost speaks to like how these qualities of self, because I don't know what else to call them, how these qualities of self are kind of passed around, right? Like from one, because it could have happened in a whole other way, where your daughter, who sounds like she's an amazingly offensive artist, and that is so close to my
She's a dental hygienist now.
what what she said in the leaves is how I feel a lot. And I'm gonna put it in leaves next time instead of words.
It was radical honesty.
It was I live for that stuff. I have 2 nephews, and I'm so worried about how I'm how I'm going to inspire them in their lives, because I think it could go lots of ways. But um, no, I think it could have gone a different way, where she could have just taken that in, internalized it, and then some, I don't know, person who doesn't brush their teeth 14 times a day comes in, and then she's like, "You're not good enough." Like,
Mhm.
it could have been passed on. But I think, the divine intervention in that situation, which was through you, I think really frees everybody, right? It frees the teacher, it frees the daughter, it frees the class, it frees whoever got the teacher feeling that way, or felt like she had the right to treat students like that. It frees them. Like, I think it's very cool how we can pass our experiences on, but also how we can pass freedom from these things on as well, just through authenticity, through being ourselves, through holding the light in moments where sometimes we really don't want to. We want to say F you and leaves, but instead we center into our hearts and say, you know what, like, all that aside, there's more here for everybody. There's more joy here for everybody. I think that's very cool. I like your story a lot.
Thanks. So if you walk back through your experiences and you just imagine the times that you would have liked to have written that FU and leaves, and you write it in FU and leaves, right? You write that little FU, and then you just say, and you say to that, you say to that period of time and the other people that were in it, this is how it made me feel. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you now through this session, like I'm looking in and I can say this now through here so that I can free the other
Yeah.
person and I can free my past and I can free myself to finally know that that wasn't a truth.
Yeah. It's true, and I know that, in my healing journey, I've done the time travel. That's what I call it, because I don't know what it's
Yeah.
called. The time travel a lot to, sometimes to make peace, and sometimes it really is to get out what I couldn't get out at the time.
Mhm.
And what I noticed in doing that as well is the shift in my physical body, right? Because our body holds on to all of those emotions at a very deep levels that are sometimes hard to access. But when we can revisit our experiences, even if it's when it's just within ourselves like that, and we can reprocess it, it does lighten things up, and helps us to release things and let go of things. So I love that. I think that's awesome that you mentioned that.
You're gonna remember that forever now. It's like,
Oh, the leaves put it all into into a good perspective.
right, and
But
that's why stories help. That's why sharing our
totally,
experiences help and being vulnerable and that real authenticity of it really, really
100%.
matters. Because if you share the authenticity of the experience and you can, let yourself laugh at that experience in so many ways, you can see that unfolding. You can see your own experiences and you realize you're not so alone and that you've had those moments. And if only you had someone to stand for you, if you only had someone to speak a different truth or see a different side, if only, imagine if only.
It's so true, and I think that's a beautiful way to put that. And I think what also we have to realize is, like, when we're holding on to these, like, difficult feelings, difficult emotions, who we were at the time they happened is a completely different memory and process than who we are now. Like, some of the hardest moments I have in terms of memories, I was like 4 years old, right? And so me as an adult sees it completely differently, but that doesn't change the fact that the energy was still being held in my body from that. So going back and reprocessing it as an adult with, like, the wisdom and whatever, wisdom and
Whatever
whatever,
this is.
whatever. It allowed me to see it from a different perspective, and to lend that understanding to that 4-year-old self. I went through a lot of shamanic journeying in my healing journey, and a lot of that has to do with going back in time and readdressing things or reprocessing things. That's the one thing that I noticed the most in that, was that, who I am now and who I was then, two different people, um, and the wisdom, and knowledge and things like that I have now, was able to set that other person free and release that, which I think is a really cool thing
Yeah.
for everybody when it happens, for everybody.
And people always ask about like forgiveness, like thinking about the past. And people say, I don't, I can't forgive. And I'm like, you don't have to forgive to heal yourself.
No, you don't.
You don't have to forgive. You have to set yourself free. And you have to forgive yourself thinking that it's your job to carry it.
It's
And there's a
true.
difference, right? It's like
Totally.
it's your ownership and responsibility is on you for your part in believing that it was your job or what did I do wrong? I did nothing wrong. This was a shitty person. And people always say, oh, all people are innately good. And I'm like, that's not true.
Mm.
There are people in the world that are not
Yeah,
innately good, and we don't have to believe in the fairy tales.
no,
And
true.
there's a reality to that. There's a truth to that. So there's a freedom that comes in there, and that's where your authenticity is. You don't pretend. Right?
Yeah,
You don't have to pretend that you love everybody. You don't have to pretend you're freeing everybody. You don't have to pretend you're okay with everything
yeah.
because maybe you're not.
It's true, and I think that is a huge element of authenticity is honesty about how we feel about our experiences. I know when I got really sick several years ago, because I used to be like a total people pleaser, right? Like couldn't say no. Yeah, probably everybody in the chat's got their hand up with that.
Yeah.
um, couldn't say no. But when I got really sick, I didn't have a choice, right? Like I had to really decide, am I going to pick up the phone, even though I love that person? I know they're going to talk my ear off for 10 hours and I've got enough energy for half a minute. So I'm going to not answer the phone. Experience it, having those experiences where I had to not please people anymore, I think was a big part for me of authenticity and deciding that even though we love people doesn't mean we always have time for the people that we love, or at least time
Mhm.
to give all the energy that they need. It's a very it's cool. It's cool when we start pulling all these things apart, I think, and figuring them out.
And sometimes we got to become the person we need to be, right?
Totally.
You got to first be the person you need to be to deal with the things that you need to deal with. And those things don't even awaken in us until we're ready to deal with those things and those moments and those experiences. And so I say, don't rush the process. You got to become that version of you first that has the strength, that has the courage, that has the time, that has the energy, that has all of those things that are needed to be able to process and deal and resolve and release those things. And until then, you're not really there, right? And so
Exactly.
it's such an experience. And I know we both have disabilities, right? We both have those things within our lives. And I always say it has taken me to, I think that falling to my knees in all of those areas of my life has really truly given me it was without knowing it, that it was a part of the gift and the blessing to
Yeah.
become more of who I'm really truly meant to be.
100%, and I noticed the same thing as well. Like, you know, whether it's through illness or disability or just any kind of difficulty, when our lives get stripped down and we hit like that rock bottom place, like that to me is where the magic happens. I always tell people, no one meets God on a good day, right? Like we're usually like when someone's going to church for the first time or temple or the woods or wherever they're going for their connection and their fellowship, it's usually on their worst day. It's usually at a time in their life where they need something, right? And I always say no one meets God on a good day because of that. And but that's also where the magic happens, because when we get to that place where we literally have nothing anymore, and we can surrender that's that connection. When I think of surrender, I don't think of letting go of something. I think of this, right? Like a hand from the sky touching your hand, and it's like, I'm going to pull you out of this. But first, you've got to set the weights down. And to me, that's what surrender is. It's letting go of how am I going to get out of this with just being open to the idea of getting out of it, or moving on from it or whatever. Do you want to hear a really creepy story? Cre-
Yeah.
Not creepy, cool stories, right? It is a little creepy too. And it's kind of in line with a lot of the things that we were talking about, especially when you were talking about, we need to become the person that we need. I think we always are becoming
Mhm.
the person that we need. But so when I was 19, I had a really bad car crash, like rolled it, super scary, weird, terrifying, all of it. And I had a brain injury that they didn't catch right away. It took months for it to show up. And then I was hospitalized again. And I thought at that point that I was completely losing my mind, and kind of like I was a little bit. It was very hard. But I was lying in the hospital bed one night, freaking out, crying, listening to music, somewhere between Earth and somewhere else, and I saw a light at the end of my bed, like, kind of the end of the other side of the room opening up, right? And I knew, obviously, that this is not physical, it's psychic and whatever, and then I saw this man kind of come out of it made of blue light. And he put his hand out, and all of a sudden, within every layer of my being, I just knew I was going to be okay. Like somehow I was going to be okay. Fast forward like a year and a half ish, maybe, yeah, a year and a half or so. And I'm at this big festival, right? Like I recovered for the most part. And I was at this big festival full of healers and mystics and all kinds of stuff. It was like 3 or 4 days long in the middle of nowhere in the woods. It was awesome. None of us wore shoes. Half of us didn't wear clothes. It was great. So so there was a sweat lodge being held, and there were drummers, and I was kind of like off on my own in the woods, just having my own experience. And I went into this deep trance state, like I was like really gone somewhere else because of the drumming, I think, and the energy and the nature. And all of a sudden, I saw a light, and then I walked towards the light, and then I saw somebody in a hospital bed, and then I put my hand out, and I realized my hand was made of blue light. And I realized in that moment that the person who came through that felt so helpful and loving through that portal or whatever was me from the future. And it was a really, really weird experience. But it just goes into what you were saying about how we become the people that we need to be. After that car accident, after that recovery, I gained a lot of interesting energetic skills as a healer, and I did all kinds of stuff. And I really do think that it was me kind of sending energy back to the past in some level. Anyway, that's my weird story about how we become the people that we need.
Yeah. And it's not weird because I had a similar experience, and I literally was, and I don't know how or why, like in the big scheme, but I literally was putting my hand on the door to go outside to mow the grass. And I just heard this voice said, "You could die now. You can come home now."
Oh,
And I could feel as if they were going to let me have a heart attack.
oh,
And I'm just like, and everything stopped and paused, I guess. And I felt myself go into heaven. And I could see heaven. And I could see, and I said, that might sound weird to people, but I was
no,
walking around in heaven. And all of a sudden, all I seen was this green, green grass. And
mm,
everything was green, green grass. And then these silvery big trees, and they look like trees. And these wheat look like weeping willows. And these were the guardians. And then there was a tent. And the tent had this beautiful woman. And she was like taking care of these little souls who had returned to heaven. And then there was a balcony. And on the balcony was this radiant woman, and she was wearing like this shimmery gown, like a long thing, and she was just glowing, and she was gold.
oh,
And she was looking over, and without looking at me, she said, "Always remember, don't let the weeds choke out your green, green grass."
aw, I love that.
And when she turned to look at me, she was me.
Oh,
They
that's
were like, and instantly I heard, "You can stay or you can go. It's your choice." And I said, "I can't leave because my daughter's about to have a child. And if she has her child and I'm not there, she will not be the mother that this child needs. I need to go back."
that's so cool.
And it was in that moment, yeah, it was just in that moment where I just put back, and my hand was still on the door, flip-flops on my feet, cut off jean shorts, tank top. And I walked outside to the lawnmower, and I'm like just pushing the button to turn on the lawnmower. And I just said, "F you, weeds."
That
I'm not letting no more weeds choke out my green, green grass. Wherever my future is filled with green, green grass. And that's all I know.
that is so beautiful. I love that, and I think there is like a really powerful lesson in that for everybody, and it's not all the weeds choke out the green grass, but also I think that maybe on some level, even when it doesn't feel like it, I think we do look out for ourselves. We have our best interest at heart. I think it's a beautiful example of that. We could probably do a whole live sometime of just stories, and I'd be all over it. I'd be all over it.
I was just gonna say, I think we're gonna have to do a series, right, of these little
I think
experiences and
we
share
should.
these experiences. So everyone will see more of us. I just know it.
Oh, I think so. I've had the time of my life on this live. With
Right?
you, with the people who are watching and chatting with us and asking us awesome questions.
Right.
Um,
And we can come back and look at these later and check them out. But it was just like it's hard to answer everything and still be able to stay in here. But I really want, we really, this was not our intention today. This was not what we were
No,
going to talk about. And
I
it's
love
like,
it though.
and right. And so this is what makes it so magical, is that this was not our intention. And on Monday, I'm going for a spinal fusion
Oh
on
my,
Monday. Right. And so I'm stepping into a whole new experience in my life, and an experience that I have to walk through,
yeah.
a part of that journey. And yeah, and this was such a beautiful way to be able to kind of step into that pause and begin that journey.
Well, I love that, and I hope that, well, I have no doubt that it's going to go incredibly well. But yeah, we should do this again for sure. And I like the fact that we started with a one idea, and I think we went somewhere way better than what we had initially kind of talked
Yeah,
about. Like
way
it's
better.
way better. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And thank you to everyone who's watching, and who has been following through all the way to the end. We just so appreciate this. And thank you all. And we'll be back.
We
Much
will.
love to you all. Bye bye.
Take care, guys.